According to a new report in Rolling Stone, quote, Donald Trump has privately voiced his anger over Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis sending plane loads of migrants to Martha's Vineyard. Trump's displeasure, however, has nothing to do with moral revulsions at the governor using human beings as unsuspecting pawns for a political attack. Instead, Trump is telling allies and confidants that he's outraged that DeSantis seems to think that he's allowed to steal the ex-president's mantle as both media star and as undocumented immigrant basher-in-chief. The article went on to note that Trump has pointedly complained to some of his closest associates that DeSantis is attempting to take the national news cycle away from him. In other words, it's not that Trump disagreed with DeSantis' stunt to use migrants as political pawns to get some headlines and to try to wrest the national conversation away from reproductive rights and into more comfortable territory for Republicans by talking about immigration. That was all fine. Trump's just mad that he's not getting credit for it. Because you know what they say, narcissist's gonna narcissist. What's telling too is that if Republican politics was actually about the policy, then ostensibly, all Republicans would applaud policy that they agree with. But that is clearly not the case here, because even though this is a move that Trump agrees with, because he's not the one getting credit for it, he's against it. Because it's not about any governing principles or values, it's about him. It's about doing just anything and then having people clap at him like a herd of seals. To Donald Trump, it's never about the country, it's about Donald Trump. Which is probably why, according to Rolling Stone, Trump has privately accused DeSantis of doing this largely to generate a 2024 polling boost for himself among GOP voters. And by the way, I don't disagree with him. The difference here is that Republicans are all acting in a way that they think might get them attention and help boost their own personal political prospects. Trump saying DeSantis pulled this disgusting stunt to help himself belies the fact that Trump would also have pulled this stunt to help himself. Again, these people are driven not by any consistent governing philosophy, they're driven by their own egos and nothing more. And if you needed further evidence of the fact that Trump is displeased with DeSantis' posturing here, consider the fact that Trump has thus far refused to make many, if any, public statements applauding DeSantis' actions, even as the rest of the GOP makes statements like this.
Let me say, Sean, I commend Greg Abbott for sending the immigrants to these blue cities. I commend Ron DeSantis for doing so, and they need to do more. Tomorrow, Martha's Vineyard needs 100. The next day, they need 200. The next day, they need 1,000. D.C. says it's a crisis to get 6,000. They need 10,000. They need 100,000.
And given that Trump is arguably the most impulsive person in politics and rarely does an errant thought enter his brain that he considers restraining himself from weighing in on, his silence really does speak volumes here. And by the way, this wouldn't be the first time that Trump has viewed politics solely through the lens of his rivalry with the Florida governor. On September 7th, Trump posted a statement entitled, Mar-a-Lago raid gives Trump a 10-point boost over DeSantis. That post has since been deleted off Trump's website, but the sentiment is clear. In a Republican Party where it's always I and never we, everything ultimately comes down to how the politicians will derive some benefit. And look, with all of that said, I am not a fan of the horse race politics of it all. I don't think the real news is that Trump and DeSantis are jockeying for position as 2024 approaches. The real news here is that any way you cut it, the Republican Party is led by people who think that using migrants, using human beings as pawns in a political stunt is not only not disqualifying, but an idea so good that they're all at each other's throats to claim credit for it. And that's a party, by the way, that continues to parade itself around as being pro-life. And yet here they are cheering on having lied to 50 people about getting jobs and housing and even where they were going, knowing full well that they were being sent to a remote island with no jobs, no housing, and no essential services. Because apparently, when Republicans aren't grandstanding about how much they care about human life, they're doing everything they can to destroy it. And there's another point here that I think is worth making. Yes, Trump is a dangerous authoritarian, and yes, it is okay to find solace in his misery, even in situations like this one, where he's clearly incensed about the fact that Ron DeSantis is encroaching on his monopolistic control of the GOP. But let's not pretend for a second that Ron DeSantis is any less dangerous than Donald Trump. This is by no means a situation where we can just say, well, he's not Trump, so really how dangerous can he be? Here's former Obama Communications Director Dan Pfeiffer making exactly that point.
There is this sense that anything better than Trump is okay, right? I was having a conversation with a incredibly anti-Trump former Republican who certainly is more progressive, who is not as conservative as Ron DeSantis, but thinks Ron DeSantis is within the band of pre-Trump normalcy. And so there's this world where DeSantis becomes acceptable to a broad swath of people who found Trump abhorrent because he's simply not Trump. And he's actually more dangerous than Trump. And you can just see a world where they decide, the world decides, the reporters who are yearning to return to pre-Trump both sidesism think that Ron DeSantis is acceptable. And he is a deeply dangerous, incredibly cruel authoritarian who just tweets less than Donald Trump. That's what we're talking about here. So you don't want to imbue him with strength, because strength is one of the most, it's not healthy, but one of the most persuasive political characteristics. So there, you have to find a way to talk about extremism that is extremism born from weakness, born from fear. And I think that's how we have to think about Trump and Ron DeSantis.
In other words, Trump and DeSantis feuding over leading the GOP in the wake of this migrant stunt isn't about which one is winning, because it doesn't matter which one is winning, because they've proven that they are equally dangerous and equally authoritarian, even if Donald Trump has proven himself just a little too dumb and sloppy to get away with his crimes. The real issue here is that all of the candidates vying to lead the Republican Party are dangerous. The GOP today has devolved into a sprint to the far right, where the only way to confirm your conservative bona fides is to show that you're more extreme than everyone else, more heartless, more bullying, and more willing to disregard laws and precedent and the Constitution. There are no more moderating forces in the GOP. They don't exist. There is no lane for centrism. It is only a matter of how much farther to the right you can go. What we're seeing right now between Trump and DeSantis is a testament to exactly that. So here's what I would suggest. Instead of trying to figure out who's less dangerous between Trump and DeSantis, let's instead focus our energy on ensuring that neither of them is able to gain more power. We have the opportunity in just 50 days to expand Democrats' majority in the federal government and strip the Republicans of their majorities in states like Florida. Because the agenda between these two parties could not be more clear. In fewer than 2 years, Democrats have passed the American Rescue Plan, an infrastructure package, a gun safety bill, the PACT Act, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, forgave student loan debt for 43 million American borrowers, expanded NATO, and added 10 million jobs. What have the Republicans done? Well, under Ron DeSantis' leadership down in Florida, they've passed a law banning the acknowledgement of the existence of LGBT Americans, they've banned abortion after 15 weeks, and they've banned books from schools and libraries. That's the difference. One party is looking to expand your rights and bolster the middle class. The other is looking to strip you of your rights as part of some far-right Christo-fascist fever dream. So make sure you have a plan to vote in November, make sure your circle has a plan to vote in November, and send a message to both Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis that their brand of conservatism has no place in this country. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.